He didn't row with the oars, but used them to steer the boat by lowering one or the other into the current to bring the bow around. He had worked on his technique so it was smooth and he wouldn't splash. The oars were an extension of his arms and his movements were smooth and unhurried. His friend Joe Pickett had once described his face and eyes as hawk-like. His blonde ponytail, constrained by leather falcon jesses, had grown to midway between his shoulders. It was tucked into the collar of his tactical sweater, so it wouldn't be noticed. His eyes were blue and piercing, and the planes of his face were flat, severe, and aerodynamic. He wore a dark camo slouch hat, and his sharp cheekbones were darkened with soot, so the moonlight, such as it was, wouldn't reflect. There was no doubt, Nate had been told, that the world would be a better place without Henry P. Scoggins III in it. Scoggins was short, fleshy, stooped, and wall-eyed, and was the last direct heir of the Scoggins pharmaceutical empire of Newark, New Jersey. Unlike his grandfather, the senator and ambassador, or his father, the well-intentioned philanthropist, Henry III, as he was known, used his billions to manipulate monetary currencies around the world, corner the market on 14 of 17 rare earth metals, and lavishly fund activist groups that advocated legalized prostitution, drug use, and polygamy. He enjoyed the company of corrupt machine politicians, gangster rap artists, foreign dictators, and domestic organized crime figures. Several of his lurid divorce proceedings were front-page news over the years, as well as the Los Angeles murder trial, where he'd been accused of shooting a hooker in the face and killing her on the front porch of his mansion. He'd been found innocent when the jury bought his lawyer's claim that Scoggins mistook her for a homicidal home invader threatening his Beverly Hills neighborhood at the time. In video clips, Scoggins spoke in a deliberate mid-register timbre that belied his habit of constantly and furtively looking over the heads of the listeners, as if searching for someone more worthwhile, better-looking, or less threatening in the room. He'd the arrogant look of a bully who had insulated himself so he'd never have to directly confront a challenge, the kind of man comfortable with rewarding his friends in person and punishing his enemies from a distance. Isolating the man was the problem. Scoggins surrounded himself with armed bodyguards, and his 5 U.S.-based homes, Newark, Manhattan, Aspen, Palm Beach, and the infamous Beverly Hills Manse, were set up with elaborate security systems. His overseas properties in Caracas, Abu Dhabi, and Grand Cayman were protected by security contractors who were ex-Black Ops. Few people were aware of the $6 million log home Scoggins had recently purchased through a holding company on the bank of the Bighorn River. The reason? He wanted to learn to fly fish. The rumor was that Scoggins thought he was buying the river itself. For the past week, in addition to the late-night reconnaissance floats, Nate had scouted the Scoggins property on the ground by trespassing through an adjoining landholding and avoiding the caretaker. There were very few private residences in the river valley, and the few that were there were massive and expensive. They were accessed by a private road that paralleled the bends of the river. Only a couple of the structures could be seen from the road itself due to high stone walls and steel security gates. The Scoggins property had not only a swinging gate operated by remote control, but also a small guardhouse manned by an armed employee during daylight hours. At night, visitors, mostly delivery trucks, had to identify themselves via the closed-circuit camera at the gate to be buzzed in. Additional closed-circuit cameras that swept the grounds were mounted on poles within the compound, and Nate counted 2 men, one openly armed with a combat shotgun, lazily patrolling the grounds.